Ahead of Thursday's Democratic primary debate in Los Angeles, Bernie Sanders kicked off a Southern California campaign tour. As we mentioned earlier, he has seen a recent surge in the Golden State. According to a new Change Research and KQED poll, the Vermont senator holds a slight lead over Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden. 26% of likely Democratic voters say they would support him on Super Tuesday in March. Joining me now is CBS News campaign reporter Cara Korte. She is in Rancho Mirage, California. Cara, welcome. Thanks for being with us. To what does Bernie Sanders attribute his great support in California?
Yeah, Tanya, you can kind of break it into two different sections. One is that his campaign believes his message relates to all different kinds of groups and demographics in California. That would be young people and people of color in urban areas, in the cities, farmers and farm workers who sustain California's massive agriculture industry, and of course Latino and Hispanic voters that populate this state almost more than any other. So they believe they attract those groups. But something else about the Sanders campaign is they are going all in on California. It is that delegate treasure trove that he almost won from versus Hillary Clinton in 2016, and they believe this time around they can take it. Senior advisors briefed reporters just a few weeks ago about the state of the race in California. They told us that they already have an unprecedented amount of staff compared to Democratic opponents, more than 80 people on the ground. They've made more than 800,000 action impressions with voters in California, and what that means is over 800,000 people have already held parties for Senator Sanders or done door knocking for Senator Sanders. So they believe their message appeals to Californians, but they are also hitting the pavement here all across the state, up and down the coast, to try to take home California this time for Senator Sanders.
And what particular issues is he hitting on there in California? What does he find is resonating with California Democratic voters?
Well, something Senator Sanders talks about somewhat emotionally is certainly climate change. He does that at every stop, but here in California, he talks about the droughts here. He talks about the wildfires. A few months back, he visited Paradise, California, where, of course, more than 80 people were killed last year. He talks about touring that town, how it was devastated by climate fires brought about, wildfires brought about by climate change. He also talks about education. Last month, Senator Sanders received the endorsement of United Teachers of Los Angeles, which is the second largest teachers union in the entire country. He talks about raising teachers' salary to at least $60,000. But what he really hits home on in California, as he does everywhere else in the campaign trail, is health care, is his signature proposal of Medicare for all. He talks about that at the beginning of rallies, at the end of rallies, and it's something that voters I talk to on the ground certainly know that it's his signature, his backbone policy, and people believe that Sanders, if elected, can deliver Medicare for all.
And speaking of his signature issue of health care, his campaign co-chair Nina Turner appeared to take a jab at Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg before an event on Monday. Let's listen to what she said.
So for the neoliberal class and the folks who are pretending like they really care, the choice to die in the streets is no choice at all. Medicare for all.
So how exactly did this come about, Cara, and why does Sanders believe that his Medicare for All plan will work?
Yeah, so what you hear there, Senator Turner, talking about neoliberals, that's kind of coded language for Democrats but non-progressives. That certainly a lot of Sanders supporters think that Mayor Buttigieg falls in that category. His healthcare policy is known as Medicare for All who want it, indicating choice. And we have heard Senator Warren, who has recently said that she's with Bernie on Medicare for All. She has started to introduce, it's just one word, but the Senator Sanders campaign is running with it, choice. She talks about choice during her transition plan into Medicare for All, and Senator Turner there is saying that choice leaves people, as she said, quite emotionally dead in the streets. Sanders doesn't quite use that rhetoric himself, but what he will talk about is why Medicare for All who want it or leaving choice for a private option open is not feasible in his mind. He describes choice allowing for two different brackets of healthcare in this country. And he says that if there was a government program, the poor and the sick would go there, and the wealthy would maintain their private insurance. And if poor and sick people are draining a government program, he basically says it would go bankrupt. It's not sustainable. So for Sanders and his campaign, they do not believe that choice is a feasible option, that the only answer for them is Medicare for all.
And Cara, meanwhile, Sanders has not been shy about knocking his political rivals for taking donations from billionaires. And you spoke to the senator about this. Here's some of what he had to say about it.
Why would many, many billionaires be contributing to candidates if they didn't think they were getting something out of it? They're not doing it through the goodness of their hearts. And this is what is rotten in the American campaign finance system right now, is that too many candidates, not just for president, but at every level, are beholden to wealthy special interests. And that is why in Washington in recent years, we've seen massive tax breaks for the richest people in this country.
So, Cara, did Sanders offer an example of an alternate campaign finance system that he would like to see?
Yeah, and I can't let that moment go by, Tanya, without referencing Hamlet. Bernie Sanders is now something rotten in America. He's our own Prince of Denmark, I suppose. But yes, what Bernie Sanders wants to see is publicly funded elections. He wants to overturn Citizens United. It's something he says at every campaign stop, to much applause from his supporters. He believes that the campaign finance system is rotten, it is corrupt, and it is the reason why, in his mind, nothing is getting done in this country for working class people. So he thinks if Citizens United gets overturned, which, by the way, is not an easy process, it would have to go through a long legislative process in Congress. That would mean bipartisan support in Congress, which we don't see a lot of anymore these days. But he believes overturning Citizens United is essential for working class people's voices to be heard in American politics.
All right. Well, Cara Korte in California, following the Sanders campaign. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanya.